Okay, perfect. Okay. So we'll start tonight's meeting. This is the regular meeting for November 22nd, 2021. And did you print out an agenda, Scott? If you don't mind, because it's okay. Thank you. So we always begin with the acknowledgement of treaties of peace and friendship. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is traditional unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. This territory is covered by the treaties of peace and friendship, which Wolastoqiyik, Mi'kmaq, and Passamaquoddy peoples first signed with the British Crown in 1726. The treaties did not deal with surrender of lands and resources, but in fact recognized Mi'kmaq and Wolastoqiyik title and established the rules for what was to be an ongoing relationship between nations. Thank you. Walalan. Next is the reaffirmation of the oath of office. Council, if you could read that, please. Thank you. The next one is recognition of deaths in the community. So we have Gordon Russell and Jesse Devereaux of Beldoon, Adelor Godin of Lorne, and Eugene Moore and Hazel Moore of New Mills. So we could have a moment of reflection, please. Thank you. Next is the adoption of the agenda. Do we have any deletions or additions?
I have a few, Your Worship, if I may. I'd like to make a comment on the white paper. I'd also like to place a motion concerning our CAO and financing of traveling back and forth between Beldoon and Bathurst. I'd also like to discuss the issue of an email just received by our legal department from Andre Daig concerning the code of ethics and the approach that we should take with that. So after I've read the email, I'll make a motion to basically table the code of ethics document until we've had an opportunity to have a Zoom meeting with Andre Daig.
Okay, those are added. Any other additions or deletions?
I have an addition, please.
That's the, okay, so we have an addition from Councillor Carrier. That's fine. Any other additions or deletions? No. Okay, can we get a motion to adopt the agenda then?
I move that the agenda be adopted as amended with changes.
Need a seconder?
I'll second it.
On the question, all those on the question, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passed. Next, we have the under presentations, petitions, and delegations. We have some guests with us tonight from Roy Consultants. We have Francis Frenette and Matthew Sullivan, who are here to speak with us on services and traffic study, respectively. Mr. Frenette, first up.
Your Honor.
just one moment, Francis, 1 second. The conflicts of interest, is that what you were referring? Okay, yes, okay, so the adoption, any business arising for the minutes? Well, let's go with the statements of conflicts of interest first. Do we have any statements of conflicts of interest? Okay, we just have one. C.L. Ferguson will step out at the appropriate time. And business arising from the minutes. Okay, so we didn't do the adoption first. Let's do the adoption then. So the adoption of the minutes, yes. So can we get a motion to adopt the minutes?
I move that the minutes of the Committee of the Whole Council of October 4th, 2021, regular meeting of October 18th, 2021, and Committee of the Whole Council budget meeting of October 25th, 2021 be adopted as presented.
Seconder?
I'll second it.
On the question, all those in favor say aye. All those opposed say nay. Motion passed. Now we'll move to the presentations. My apologies, Francis, for that. Mr. Frenette from Roy's Consultants, followed by Mr. Sullivan from Roy's Consultants.
First, I'd like to thank council for giving us the opportunity to spend a little bit of time with you. We're not going to take too long.
Your speaker.
I'd like to thank council for giving us the opportunity to, is there a button I need to press or? Take the mask off maybe? Yeah. Try it again. Thanks for the opportunity to meet council. We've been wanting to meet councils for a couple of years now, and COVID made this is my first presentation to a council, as I was telling Nicole before you guys came in here. For those who don't know me, my name is Francis Frenette. I've been with Roy Consultants since December '87. It's going to be 34 years in a couple of weeks, I guess. Been involved in the Beldoon projects since '94, the Beldoon development, comprehensive development strategy. And yeah, so I'm just going to take 5-10 minutes maybe to just present our firm for those who you heard of us, I'm sure. You may not know all our services, so I want to take the opportunity to explain that to you guys. So here we go. So I'm going to present a short history, our organization, our offices, the expertise we offer, the target markets, quality management system, and our past projects. So I'm just going to fly by here because I know we don't have a lot of time. So don't hesitate to stop me anytime you have any questions while I'm going through it. So short history of our firm. It was founded by Mr. Jean-Jacques Roy in 1984, 5 employees. At the time, we were mostly concentrated in the Chaleur region and the Acadian Peninsula, and mostly municipal services, water, sewer, roads. Over the years, we developed a multidisciplinary structure. Sorry, I don't usually eat my words in English. I was a lot of family in Boston, so anyway. Allowing us to broaden our field expertise across the province. We are an employee-owned company since 1990. Michel Dufresne is our current CEO, succeeds to Regent Boudreau in May of 2018. So our organization, basically we are a firm of approximately 75 professionals. I say approximate because it'll vary from month to month. We have 55 employees in our Bathurst office, 20 employees in 4 regional offices, approximately 40 engineers, 30 technical support staff, and 5 administrative staffs. Our average, you can see in the pie chart, the average years of experience we have. So more than 25 years, about approximately 30% of our staff. Between 20 and 25 years experience, about 15%. And so on and so forth. You can read the chart right to 22% has less than 5 years. So we're pretty diversified in that way. We're a privately owned company, as I mentioned before, 24 shareholders, employees, one of the major 100% New Brunswick-owned multidisciplinary, that was pretty good this time, wasn't it? Consulting engineering firm. Michel Dufresne is our CEO. Paul Arsenault is, another Paul Arsenault is our Chief Financial Officer. Phil Landry is our Chief Operating Officer for Buildings, and Bruce Como is our Chief Operating Officer for Infrastructures. Our offices, our head office is in Bathurst. We have offices in the Acadian Peninsula, located in Tracadie, one in Moncton Southeast, located in Dieppe, one in Fredericton River Valley, located in Fredericton, and one in Madawaska Northwest, located in Edmundston. Our expertise, mechanical engineering, electrical engineering, civil engineering, and different fields, structural, geotechnical, hydraulics, transportation, which is why Mr. Sullivan's here tonight, environment. Our approach, make the project's delivery process more fluid by grouping everything, all the expertise in one house, basically. So that's what we believe we can offer to our clients. The target markets, port facilities and coastal development, buildings, solid waste, recycling, environment, industrial, airport infrastructure, municipal infrastructures, roads and buildings. So you can see by the pie chart the division of each disciplines, each target market that we have. So 30% for institutional, commercial buildings, 9% environment, 22% municipal. So as you can see, we were 100% municipal back in the 80s, so we've diversified quite a bit. 23% industrial and 16% transportation. Quality management, that's a bunch of lines and circles, just try to explain that we have a quality management on board, that it forces us to do double checks before we submit reports and deliver projects. Past projects. So basically, I'm just going to go through a bunch of projects. This is the last of my presentation. Again, I didn't want to take too much of your time, but I think the projects as we've done in the past is an indication of we're not just a one-trick pony. So we've done some dredging in the Tracadie, Charlotte area, did sheet piling projects at the Port of Beldoon, freight station, MD Young Terminal, we were involved in that. We were involved in the sheet piling replacement of Terminal 1 in Port of Beldoon. Breakwaters, some in Valcomo, some in Bas-Caraquette. Icebreakers in Caraquette. We were involved in the Terry Fox Elementary School. We were involved in Convention Center in Edmundston. La Mosaïque du Nord School in Balmoral. Sport Pavilion in Edmundston. James K. Irving and Multi-Purpose Center in Bouctouche. The Bathurst Regional Hospital, which is still under construction. The Villa Saint-Joseph Nursing Home, Tracadie. The Domaine des Bâtisseurs Nursing Home in Edmundston. Medical Training Center, University of Moncton. National Bank of Canada in Bathurst. Pharmacie Jean Coutu in Bathurst. We also were involved in the one in Petit Rocher. Public Service Pay Center in Miramichi. Red Pine Landfill, we've been actively involved in that for as long as I can remember, 84, 85. Wood waste storage pile closure. Coal yard extension, NB Power Thermal Generating Station in Beldoon. Ash cell extension, generating station in Beldoon. Rehabilitation industrial properties, former Newcastle mill site. I'm actually involved right now into the decommissioning of the water pipeline that was bringing water all the way to towards the west of Miramichi. They're decommissioning that. Silver refinery extension, smelter unfortunately closing, but we were involved in those projects. Beechwood Generating Station, Unit 1, Bennett Environmental, back in the early 2000s. Nipisiguit Falls Generating Station, spillway and intake refurbishing. Modular Fab Building in Beldoon, runway 10 and 28, Bathurst Regional Airport. The Apron, Bathurst Regional Airport. Airport Operation Facility, Greater Moncton. Stade Moncton, 2010, where we took the natural soccer field and turned it into a synthetic field. I was involved in that project. Sanitary sewer treatment facilities in Miramichi, the one in Beresford, the water and force main lines and on the bridge next to the Tim Hortons in Beresford, the water supply, Tracadie Shala elevated tower, King Avenue upgrade in Bathurst, Dalhousie, Brunswick Street upgrade, over Observation, Esperad and Pats, Grand Falls, Urban Residential Infrastructure Development in Halls Creek, Moncton. Patricia Water Treatment Plant, that's one of my projects right now that I'm supposed to do the commissioning in a week or two, possibly. Route 11 bypass, that's the transport stuff, Tracadie to 6 Road, Murray Avenue Bridge, Bathurst. Bridge restoration, Craig Brook, Perth Andover, Napan River Culvert, Miramichi. Culvert replacement, Severn Brook, and slope protection, Jacket River. Sorry for going this fast, but I wanted to leave Matt some time to answer questions regarding your traffic study. So, as you can see, Roy Consultants is diversified, although I can hardly say the word in English, multidisciplinary. And we're here to help anytime you need some help in any of your projects, and we'll be glad to help. So I'm going to pass. Is there any questions? I'm going to ask Matt to talk about just explaining the traffic study that we worked on for you guys. You're welcome.
Appreciate that, Francis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Welcome, Matthew.
So I did set down a report beside me that was submitted back in September of the 7th. Basically what I did was take that presentation and break it down into a short PowerPoint with the area of focus on the crosswalk at the Jacket River School, as well as speed reduction in front of the municipal hall here as the two highlights. In particular to the speed reduction in front of the municipal hall, you can take that example and apply it throughout the municipality where we looked at the speed reduction and did the exercise. I'm in the transportation department at Roy Consultants. I do a lot of traffic work and a lot of highway work. I've been there for about 6 years, and I am a professional engineer. So what we're going to look at is just a quick overview of what the study was. I know it was previous council that had approved it, so I just want to walk through what they had asked for. We'll talk a little bit about speed reduction, that crosswalk in front of the Jacket River School, and the passing lane removal, which was a third component of that project over by Schiller Sawmills. So what we did, working from left to right on the screen, is we had identified 7 different speed areas within the municipality. So near Archibald Road, the Jacket River School right before there when you're crossing the bridge and coming up the hill heading towards the school. Within the school zone itself, over near the Superette, near the Evangeline Church or the municipal building. Then it's changing as we head out towards Schiller Sawmills and between the Port Glencore Smelter to the Pointe-Verte village limits. So it's broken down in my brackets and stars on the side as area 1, 2, 3, and 4 being Archibald Road, the Jacket River School, near the Evangeline Church and the Glencore Smelter. So those 4 areas were the areas that we focused on to capture our data. So the speed reduction study portion of it, and the results are a little bit small, and I'll try and do the best that we can with what's on the screen. Basically what we use is a pneumatic tube counter. So you may have seen it on the road. It's 2 black tubes that go across the road. They're spaced about 1 meter apart, and as a vehicle travels over them in either direction, it can pick up which direction it's going. Based on the distance between the 2 wheels, it can pick up if it's a transport truck, if it's a regular pickup truck, or if it's a car or a motorcycle. So based on what the previous council had asked, one of the main reasons for the speed reduction was a concern for transports, especially within the town limits. So in the tables, what I've done is I've broken it down to show you a vehicle class 4 to 13, which is 0.3 in each of those tables. So that's the percentage of total vehicles collected that are what are considered heavy vehicles. So those are your transports, whether they're logging trucks or delivery vehicles, transports going to the grocery store to drop off produce, those types of things. So the vehicle counter also picks up the vehicle count. So over the period, for example, if we take the Jacket River School, we were set up there from June 4th to June 9th. That's a bad example. I took that out of the table. If we look at Main Street area number 1, which is out by Archibald Road, from June 9th to 11th, we picked up about 4,700 vehicles, and that's in both directions. So that's the combined directions. We can break it down further in the splits for northbound, southbound. But of those vehicles, about 6.9% were representative of a heavy vehicle. So that's the transport vehicle. And one thing that's important to mention throughout our study is that obviously as we approach the industrial areas, the Schiller's sawmills and the Glencore smelter, especially between the Jacket River Superette, where transports have the opportunity to get off the highway to make their way to that industrial area, or by taking the Belledune-Turgeon Road exit, the percentage of heavy vehicles goes up from anywhere from 2% into the 12%, and it remains pretty consistent in those areas. Another important thing to mention, what's shown in each of these study areas, and it's pretty well the same throughout Belledune if you look at it as a whole instead of 4 separate study areas. I've marked the posted speed there, and the 85th percent speed is what 85% of the vehicles that are passing our counter, that's the speed that they're traveling at. So the average for Belledune is about 15 kilometers an hour over the posted speed limit in each of the zones, and it's consistent throughout. When we get over by the Glencore smelter, it actually jumps to about 20 kilometers an hour over the speed limit. And that's, like I said again, it's 85% of all of the vehicles are traveling at that speed, or So again, those 4 areas that we looked at, that you saw the tables for, Archibald Road, within the school zone, the Evangeline Church, and the Glencore smelter. So what we look for when we're determining or getting ready to post a speed limit, especially on a new roadway, we're looking at the physical characteristics of the roadway, so the geometry of it, how much lane width do we get between the yellow line and the white line for a vehicle to work in. There's a certain value there where you get a maximum lane width, and as you decrease the width of the lane, it becomes more uncomfortable for the driver to drive. It feels like he or she is more closed in, so it becomes more uncomfortable. So on the highways, your lanes are actually wider than perhaps a subdivision street. So we look at those types of things, the clearance from that white line into the shoulder, if there's a ditch there, if there's telephone poles or signs there, which leads into the second point, which is roadside interference. So we look at if there's any houses that are glued to the street. What's it like for driveways, accesses, side streets? How do they factor in? Is the volume coming from those side streets and houses really enough to impact travel? We look at the weather. In this particular case, we did the studies during the late spring and summer. It can differ when we get into winter. We look at the presence of other vehicles. So again, what is the vehicle volume? Is it a high volume? Is it a low volume? And we look at the speed limitations. So what's the existing speed limit, and how are the majority of your vehicles on the roadway? How are they using that route? So in terms of Area 3, which is just in front of the municipal building here, the physical characteristics, we would designate it as a zone that just based solely on geometry warrants about 80 kilometers an hour for the zone. The amount of roadside interference is very little. So by that, you have your yellow line, you have your white line, you have a nice paved shoulder, and then there's nothing within the clearance distance, so the distance from that shoulder to the first nearest obstacle. So based on studies, which are done throughout the United States and Canada, there's like a maximum distance that after that distance, if there's a house off in the corner, it doesn't really play a factor on how the driver feels as they're driving that road. So in terms of interference, there's not a lot on this stretch of roadway that would make a driver slow down. The weather, again, we did it in the spring and summer, so probably your busier times, because we are a tourist area and we get a lot of people coming home during those times of the years to benefit from the nice weather. The presence of other vehicles, generally speaking, in terms of what the capacity of the roadway is, we're fairly low in terms of volume before we start getting one vehicle influencing the speed of another. So usually you get that when you have a string of maybe 15 cars or so that are driving one behind the other, and it happens frequently throughout the day. We don't see that on this roadway, or it's very limited when it does occur. And then the posted speed is at 80 kilometers an hour. So when you take all of those things into account, and that the design speed is 80 kilometers an hour, 85% of your vehicles are traveling 15 kilometers over the speed limit. What we typically want to do when we're setting a speed limit is take the 85th percentile of your vehicles and go plus or minus about 8 kilometers an hour. That's the comfort zone. And in this case, your 85th percentile is already comfortable going over 15 kilometers over or more. I think it's not here, it's in the report, but some of the max speeds were in the 135 kilometer an hour range on these sections of roadway. So in conclusion, I'll explain it a little more, but the posted speed that we see here, based on the general rules of thumb, is okay. What would need to be done to fix the speed problem is you'd need to introduce something within the zone that you want to reduce the speed to have a negative impact on how the driver sees that roadway and wants to travel that roadway. So by that, I'm saying that the level of comfort on your existing facilities for the typical driver is very comfortable. They don't feel like there's anything that is a danger to them, which is why most of them are feeling comfortable driving in excess of the speed limit. So it's easy to decrease the speed limit or change a sign and bring it from 80 to 70. It's a lot harder to change the perception of the driver to get them to then reduce their speed to 70, for an example. And we see it out by the Glencore smelter, where there's a lot less driveways. It's mostly wooded area. Out there, people are comfortable going 20 over the speed limit. So it's hard to say that we can change the sign to 70 and get that reduction that you guys are looking for. And in terms of transport traffic or heavy vehicle traffic, it's a very small percentage of what's actually going through. So in terms of looking at it from a professional standpoint, there's none of the indicators there to really say, okay, we need to take this speed and reduce it. Do you want me to stop for questions now or just keep going? Okay. So again, that's just another example of those four tables again showing your 85th percentile, which is really what we focus on when we're looking at this. The crosswalk warrant.
Excuse me, Matt. So with regards, if I could, just with regards to the speed limit changes, the DTI has to take a engineering study such as this. They look at it, and then they would decide whether it's, and I think they're pretty much the same. If it's the 85th percentile, they're probably going to keep the existing, which is why I want to let council know that I did send this report to DTI, and they haven't given me a decision yet based on it. So just know that they have this exact same report.
Yeah, and to shed a little more light on that, so the 85th percentile and the criteria that I had given here in terms of physical characteristics, that's based on the Transportation Association of Canada, as well as the International Transportation Engineers Association. So they're two entities, and by following this criteria, what they end up bringing to the table is uniformity as you travel from one municipality to the other. So you're not in Pointe-Verte and you get to the Beldoune limits and the rules of the road change, or when you're in Beldoune and you travel to Bathurst or Campbellton, it's not a shock to the drivers. So everything remains uniform moving through the province.
Just one question and one observation. We had a request in the Armstrong Brook area to remove it's at 80 right now. I think that's also one that hasn't been sent out, right? Or do we have? Yeah, so, but you had mentioned that there are mitigating factors at some point. In Armstrong Brook, there's no sidewalk. So the road, because I know when I used to run that territory, that was the only part of the village I was scared to run through. And that's the part that has 80 kilometers. So there's about, this much distance between the end of the pave and the person's either their driveway or the ditch. So to me, that would be a perfect example of where that needs to be reduced. It should be reduced. It's been asked to be reduced. I think it should be based on just those conditions alone. Would we need to add mitigating factors like that? Would that be considered then? If DTI thought, well, no, we have these other parameters that tell us that it's probably should be at 80, but they've probably never been there and seen the geographical outlook of that road. So they wouldn't be able to take into account the fact that there's no room there for a pedestrian.
So that's a really good point. And geometry of roadways changes a lot. And, in a place like Armstrong Brook, where they probably go and re-ditch every once in a while, and the ditches always get a little bit deeper than what they were before, it'd be something that we have to look at in terms of geometry to make a professional recommendation. But it's definitely those types of features that could make the roadway more hazardous, and it may end up meeting the criteria. So how you take that type of scenario and apply it to the different regions within your municipality is really tricky, because you would almost have to pick what area that you want to see the speed reduction. And we know that we need to, on average, we need to cut the overspeeding in half. We need to fall within that 8 km/h comfort zone. So we need to bring it down, 15 kilometers plus, or at least, half of that to fall within the existing speed limit. But we need to take that particular area, look at all of the factors that we can, and then apply a mitigation for that area. So what we do for in front of the municipal hall may not be the same as what needs to be done near Archibald Road. It may not be the same as what needs to be done at Jacket River School. So this is really just scratching the surface of it and giving like the general data to say, all right, here's the deal, and it didn't come back super favorable for speed reduction. So then you have to really dig into it and say, okay, what can we do to these sections of roadways to encourage driver behavior to change and encourage the speed limit decrease? Does that answer that?
Just, if I may, Your Worship, just a comment, if you drive through our community, I believe there's like 7 or 8 different speed zones in a 23-kilometer range. I am almost guarantee you're not going to see that anywhere else in northern New Brunswick. With that said, the issue that I believe we have is that from the Armstrong Brook area to basically the sawmill, is that we have tried numerous times to deal with the trucking through that community, through our community. We're trying to find a way. It's been a struggle with DTI and Department of Justice in trying to get speed reductions and something done with the trucking coming through our community. With that said, that's the purpose of trying to get the traffic down. If we get the speed limit down, because if you leave the sawmill, for example, it's 70. You come through here, you just get past the municipal office here, it's up to 80. Gets into, by the superette there, just past Armstrong Brook, it drops to 60. And then you go through the school zone, it's 30. You get on the other side of that, it's a 60 again, and then back to a 70, basically when you cross the Jacket River Bridge. Now, our problem is the trucking. They're going way too fast, loaded and unloaded both ways. They use that road. It's an extremely dangerous and hazardous stretch for trucks traveling at basically 80 kilometers an hour. You know, as our mayor mentioned, you know, there's not a lot of room to walk there. With that said, we also know that the Department of Justice or Public Safety will respect, they will have the RCMP respect our speed limits. They will not respect the fact that, you know, Balloon wants to stop traffic going there. They say it's a public road and they're free to use it and so on and so on. So it's been 25 years that our community has fought with the Department of Public Safety trying to do something about this hazard of trucking going through our community from the superette to the sawmill. They all say the same thing. It's a public road and you're free to use it, and I guess technically we got to respect that. But they will implement our speed limits. And if we have a reduced speed limit to 70 kilometers an hour on that road, I agree 100% with what you're saying, because I drive there basically daily, you know, and you're probably right when you say the 8-kilometer range is probably pressing your button. But the other side of the coin is, at least if the RCMP are implementing speed limit restrictions on that road, maybe that will send a deterrent to the trucking industry to go the other way. You can travel faster, you can move more freely, and you're not creating a hazard. Now, in my opinion, that's the strongest thing we're trying to achieve here, not to make another speed restriction. We're trying to, if we can get the speed limit down, then trucking is going to have to respect it, and the RCMP will enforce the speed limit. They will not enforce us trying to stop them, and there's where our problems are.
That's a tough one to answer in terms of policing. I'm not really an expert on how they enforce it, so I won't comment on it. I'll just bring you back to the tables and maybe suggest that everyone reflects in terms of percentage of those trucks versus the percentage of your local users. When we're talking, you know, we see in table 2, we're at 2% of heavy vehicles. In table 1, we're at 6%. And in tables 3 and 4, we're at 12%. So by implementing those, you're affecting your local traffic a lot more, your car users more than those transport trucks. And that's strictly, like I said, my opinion based on the numbers is the percentage is so small that I think even if we took those heavy vehicles out, we'd still be seeing an 85th percentile way over, which means your typical user is used to traveling that. But on another note, this report would be something maybe worthwhile talking with your local RCMP detachment and saying, hey, you know what, we had a speed study done and a lot of our vehicles are traveling over the speed limit, and we want to know why and what can you do to help us out. It's the best I can recommend on that one. Any more questions on that particular section? Okay, I'll move into the crosswalk warrant. It gets shorter as I go, so we'll zoom through this. Basically, the Transportation Association of Canada has a decision matrix based on your posted speed within in this case, it's within the school zone, the annual or average annual daily traffic, so how many vehicles do we see on the typical day, and the current pedestrian volume crossing. Letter C typically applies to an existing crosswalk. It can also apply to how many students in this case that may potentially use this crosswalk. In your case, the volume of students would have to be probably between 30 and 50 to really have an impact on the crosswalk itself. But based on a low average daily traffic, we're at a 2-lane roadway, and the posted speed limit is 30 kilometers an hour in the school zones. The proper signage, so I put a diagram up on the side here. So just having advanced warning signs indicating that it is a school zone crosswalk and that there is probably young children using that crosswalk. And then what we call a zebra painted crosswalk is just a very well-defined crossing area on the roadway, would be the typical treatment or the typical crosswalk that we would propose here. So that would be our first step where we're in a school zone if this is not working. And it's really important to mention at this point that your 85th percentile speed within this zone is 60.35 kilometers an hour. That's just the school zone, and it does take into account June 4th to 9th, I believe, has 3 weekdays in that. So we're not seeing respect for that 30 kilometer an hour zone within the school zone, which is why I bring that point up that maybe it needs, if your painted crosswalk is not getting the respect it needs, having the flashing lights with a post and a button activation would be something that would be worth looking into as well. In terms of price difference, we're talking, something in the realm of maybe $8,000 to $10,000 to get the signs and the pavement markings on, versus something in the realm of $35,000 to $40,000 when you talk about installing those flashing beacons with the push button and bringing the electricity in and painting and putting those signs up. The last part of this.
Sorry, can I just say a couple things about the crosswalk?
Yes.
June 4th to 9th was a Friday to a Wednesday, and the posted speed limit is not 50 in that area, it's 60.
Yes. And it decreases.
It's 30 school days, but it's 60. The posted speed limit is 60 in that area.
I believe it's 60 when you leave the superette, and then it decreases not too far after
No,
the train
it
track?
decreases after the school zone.
Okay, sorry.
It's 60 through that area. I gave Scott the addresses for,
Okay, I'll have to double check that one and see why I have it there as 50. The passing lane removal, which was the third part of it. So this is Hodgins Road coming out onto the main stretch. What we noticed here is that, and I wish I had a mouse on the screen, where the position of the stop bar is on Hodgins Road makes it very difficult to see in either direction for what we call decision sight distance. So that's the time that it takes for the driver to see any oncoming vehicles, make a decision, and then proceed with its traffic movement, either turning to the left or turning to the right. So the position of the stop bar is quite a ways back. And what we noticed is that the trees in both areas, I said it's hard to see without a mouse, but coming from the stop bar, you essentially get two triangles. If my left hand here is along Route 134 and Hodgins Road, and they meet at a certain point. And you need those two triangles in both directions for the vehicle to be able to make their decision and make their movement. So here, before stepping in to remove the passing lane, because it does have some value, and I'll explain that in a second, cutting the trees and improving those sight lines so that vehicles have better sight lines, not only for the vehicles leaving Hodgins Road, but the vehicles using Route 134, they're able to see that vehicle stopped at the stop bar, would have a big improvement here. Because right now it is obstructed. The passing lane, in terms of the benefits that it has, I'm sure everybody's driven by on a busy day at the mill, and those transports are starting to line up or slow down to get into the yard. it provides a chance for that driver that's behind the transport to move out and overtake the transport and keep on with his travel rather than being disrupted by the transport's movements. So any questions on that particular one?
If I may, just when Matt was showing me the report, I'm not a traffic guy at all, and I had the same reaction I think as most of you did, because you're trying to reduce speed, but you're evaluating the 85 percentile. The 85 percentile are comfortable driving faster than opposed to speed. Unfortunately, that's what DTI are going to look at. We can't deviate from that 85 percentile TAC Transport Canada report. So I kind of had the same reaction as I think most of you at Town Council did, and I picked Matt's brain regarding that. And don't forget that this was a draft, and we have no choice but to use those guidelines. Because if we don't, DTI is just going to reject the report. That's all they're going to do. So just wanted to bring that up because I was in the same place as you guys. We're not having expertise on traffic and speed reduction.
Again, like I said, it's one thing to change the signage and that speed on the sign. It's a complete different thing to change the behavior of a driver that's very used to the roadways. And I'd be willing to take a really good bet that based on the volumes, it's your residents that are using this facility the most, and it's not, a large number of outside drivers. So you're changing people that have been in the community for a long time. So that's the hardest thing to do, is to change that behavior and make them comply with a new speed limit. So
I
that's
just
the end
wanted
of-
to ask you, have you seen anything in other communities or municipalities, anything that they have done to their roadways or to stop the through trucking, to make it more difficult for the trucks to get through, something other than reducing the speed limit?
Some of the most common ones, and I went to school in Fredericton, so I based most of my experience in Fredericton. Regent Street, for anybody that's familiar with Fredericton, it's the big one going up the hill. There's actually a side street that runs parallel to Regent, and it takes you right up that hill. And what they did there is they introduced not roundabouts, but they're traffic circles with a very, very tight radius. And that's just one example. It makes it harder for the large trucks to navigate, makes everybody reduce their speed. It's tighter, it's less comfortable. Other areas I've seen put temporary speed bumps on the roadways. You guys have weather that plays a big factor. So usually everybody, when it's snowing out and visibility becomes more difficult, it tends to reduce speed because we're talking about that driver comfort. And everybody becomes a little less comfortable, especially high snow banks and people pulling in and out of their driveways. But in the spring, summer, and fall, who's to say that night might not be an option with some advance warning that there's a speed bump coming. So at least by the time a driver has the chance to accelerate to over 15 kilometers an hour over the posted speed limit, they're forced to slow back down again. It's something that you can pull out in the winter and your plows aren't going to destroy. So that particular question, it goes back to the part where I said we have to take the area and look and see what can we do to that specific area that's going to change the behavior, because it might have some characteristics already that are favorable for reducing the speed, but they just need to be maybe brought more to the forefront or made a little more present so that the behavior is changed.
Well, for myself, I don't have an issue with the speed limits. I like the speed limits what they are. For me, it's the trucking. I know that that's the big thing that a lot of residents are not happy with, is the transports going through. And so that's kind of my thought is, and I don't even know if we are able to make those changes on that particular, on Route 134, if we were to do this, like say like a figure 8 type of a deal or circle type of a deal, that it makes it difficult for the transports to go through. That would be their deterrent to get back on the highway and go that way. Is that something that we would be able to look at doing on that road, or is that because it's not ours?
Absolutely, you would be able to do it. You'd be able to do a more detailed study, because now I believe the way it works is the Department of Transportation is pushing to each municipality how they want to manage their roadways, as long as it follows the general guideline that has to do with fluency between the municipalities as you travel from one to the other. So as long as we take the section that's of interest and study it properly and propose remedies to that area that fit the current situation, and then yes, we could definitely look at recommending it to DTI. It's a lot more in-depth study than what we looked at. Like I said, we were just scratching the surface in terms of data collection to see, okay, where are our issues within the municipality, and let's highlight a few zones. In this case, drivers are pretty comfortable, so all the zones had a few red flags go up. Perfect. Thank you very much for allowing me the chance to come and present.
Thank you, Francis, and thank you, Matthew. Appreciate that. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Hotel California.